Hi, today we're going to go over just the basic setup instructions for getting started with the C programming language. Um, if you've already got yourself a C compiler and it works for a simple program, then you can actually skip this episode and just move straight to episode 2, where we'll actually get into writing programs. But today, I'm just going to go over how to best just get everything installed. So I've got a fresh Windows VM here. I don't actually have Windows installed on my computer, so this is the next best thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to open up our browser and we are going to go to code.visualstudio.com. In another tab, we will also go to Msys2.org, just like I've typed here. For Visual Studio Code, we're just going to hit the big download button right here. Not much more to do there. And it will start that download fairly soon. It looks like I have typed a little bit too quickly here, so we'll type msys2.org again, and hopefully it will actually go there. Come on now. You can see it's still loading the whole new tab page. It's a bit of an obnoxious Edge feature. Anyway, you just want to click on this button right here to download the installer. And it's actually got installation instructions right here, but we're not going to need them because I'll walk you right through it, so not much of a chance of things getting confusing there. Now, I'm not sure what that beeping is, but I apologize for that. That is, I believe, the Windows VM complaining about something. So we'll just shrink this browser window because we may use it again. It's been a little while since I set up C on a fresh computer, so I may miss some steps. But anyway, we're just gonna go ahead and speed run through all these. I like these little context menu options, so we'll go ahead and add that and a desktop icon, why not? And while that's installing, let's also start up the Msys2 installer, which is going to take a fair amount longer. Because this is already over 2/3 done. So we'll just hit next immediately to begin with. And this is where your Msys is going to be installed, so make sure you pick the correct directory here. And there is the default start menu shortcut, and it's going to go ahead and do the install process. You can see the details if you want to know exactly what it's doing, but that's not necessary at all. Yes, and this is why I left Edge open, is because I totally forgot we need to get Python. So we will go to python.org. Oh, that is not python.org. Okay, there we go. Interesting, I've never seen that message before. While that's loading, I'm gonna kind of describe the strategy that we're gonna go through here. So, oh, well, never mind. Let's just go ahead and hover over downloads and then click this big white button right here. And it will download Python 3.10 for us. There we go. I'm gonna close some tabs just to clean up a little bit. Just go back to the new tab page, I guess. And we'll launch Python whenever it's ready. That's a trick with Chrome-based browsers, is you can click on this early and it will just immediately launch whenever it's ready. All right, so go ahead and check this box to add it to the path. If you don't know what the path is, don't worry about it for now, but we will go over that in a moment. And yes, you will need admin rights to install Python the way that I did. The other option there installs it local to your user, and so if you don't have admin rights on your computer, that's what you do. but it's the same process. It pretty much just scrolls this progress bar, and then that's all you need to worry about. So I'm just going to move this down over here. By the way, the reason we're installing Python is whenever it comes to C, compiling large projects tends to be a bit of a pain in the butt, and we're going to use something called a build system to help us manage our files and manage where our exes end up, just so that we aren't interacting with the compiler as directly and manually as you might be used to from other tutorials. So anyway, while these two guys are going, we're going to install some extensions. So extension number one is the C++ extension. I'm not sure we actually need it, but I'm going to go ahead and install it, and we'll configure it to kind of neuter it a little bit because unfortunately with Msys, it doesn't always detect where your C header files are, and so it may show errors whenever there really are none. Like when you try and compile it, it actually works. It just shows red squiggles on here, and that's very annoying. So I will go over how to disable that if it becomes a problem. Let's see. I'm also going to install the Vim extension because I'm used to the Vim Text Editor. If you've never heard of the Vim Text Editor, then don't install this, but it adds some very handy keybinds for editing text very quickly, and I'm going to use them a lot in this tutorial and the ones following. So don't worry about this particular extension unless you just want it. Of course, you can install any other extensions that you want for VS Code. There are many, many, many extensions, just so many. By the way, this one down here, there's one called Code Runner. And the reason I'm pointing it out is I actually want to make sure that you don't install that. Code Runner assumes that your entire project is stored in one C file, and that assumption is sometimes wrong. And so you'll get very confusing compiler errors. So I'm going to say that whenever you're compiling code, always use the build system that we're going to set up. All right, this is installing the debug adapter, which I'm not sure is actually going to work, but I suppose it can't hurt to try. And we're just waiting. Now it's installing the debugger, and the debugger is a tool that you can use to basically find out what exactly is wrong with your code by stepping through it line by line. Okay, now that everything is finished down here, I'm going to click Open Folder, and we're going to go ahead and create a folder for our project, or for this tutorial, basically. Whenever it comes to folders, you can make a new folder for each project if that helps you organize it better. I'm probably going to end up doing the same thing, so I'm just going to call it C tutorial with a hyphen in between. Select it, and then of course it's going to ask us if we trust that folder because it's possible that you open a folder that you don't want to be executing randomly with all your plugins that you have. But in terms of a folder I just created that's completely empty, of course I trust it. All right, Python is almost done installing, and then we can, oh yes, one more tool we need to install. So that is the Ninja build system. So just go ahead and Google for that. It's ninja-build.org if you want to go to the link directly. And what we need to do is just scroll down to the bottom and download the Ninja binary. And it's going to take you to a GitHub. All you need to do is click on ninjawin.zip for Windows. And that will download. Now it's time to talk about the path in a little bit more detail. So the path is used for the console, the command line, and it determines where exactly the console is going to look for programs. And that's important because if you put a program in C/program files and that folder is not on the path, it's not going to actually look in that folder for a program. So if I opened up a, just for example, if I opened up a command prompt and I typed imaging devices, it wouldn't actually launch this exe because it's not looking in this Windows Photo Viewer folder. So that is the very short explanation of the path. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our home directory, which is c/users/your username. My username is me, so it's me. I'm going to make a new folder here, and I like to call this folder programs. And this folder is unique in that we're going to put it on the path, and basically any exe file that we drop in this folder, you're going to be able to type that name of it, and it's just going to run immediately. So I'm going to copy Ninja into here. There we go. And we'll open a command prompt to see if this works. So just right click on the start logo down here, and you want to click on Windows PowerShell. It may take a moment to load. On slower hard drives, this does take a very long time to load. So I'm just going to type Ninja and see if it works. It does not. And you'll get a nice verbose error here. So if you want to fix that error, what you need to do is close that window. And we're going to type in this search box here, we're going to search for path. And it's going to bring up this one that seems unrelated, but it says related path. And this is actually the correct thing to be looking at. Now, if you don't have admin rights, you won't be able to open this one. You should open this one instead that says edit environment variables for your account. But regardless, it's going to open up this window. And just click environment variables, and then scroll until you see the path here in the system variables box. We'll hit edit. You can see these are the folders that Windows looks in whenever you type an exe name. But we're going to add a new entry here, and we're going to browse for it. Just click on this folder. This is your user folder, again, your home directory. And here's the programs folder that we created. And just hit OK to update those settings. I'm also going to finish the installs for Msys2 and Python now. And we'll go ahead and disable the path length limit. Again, if you're not an admin, you can't do that. So you can just close the installer. So here's the Msys2 console window. We're going to go back to this later, but for now I'm just going to minimize it. So since ninja.exe is in this programs folder, I can open up PowerShell again. Make sure you close and reopen PowerShell after changing the path. Any program that relies on the path, including Visual Studio Code, by the way, you need to close and reopen it after you update the path. If it's already closed, then when you open it, it will read the new path and everything will be fine. But now we can type Ninja, and you can see that it actually found the Ninja executable. This is a different error than we saw before. And this error is actually a good error because it's just saying you haven't initialized the build system for Ninja to work with. And that is a perfectly fine error. Okay, so the path is set up for that. What we need to also do is add another entry to the path. So we'll search path again. And I'm saying path very often, I've just noticed. It's a very common word whenever it comes to messing with environment variables in Windows. So what we'll need to do is we'll go to this PC, local disk C. Here's Msys64. This is where we installed Msys, remember. You want to click on the ImageW64 subdirectory here and click on bin and then hit OK. And so that's added that to the path as well. And the reason is that programs that you install in Msys are going to go into that exact folder. So now let's update Msys and make sure that we're on the latest version of everything. So what you need to type here is pacman -S lowercase y lowercase u. And that's not referring to the Pac-Man game or the Pac-Man character. It is referring to package manager. It's short for package manager. So it's saying warning, terminate other Msys2 programs before proceeding. Well, we don't actually have any other Msys2 programs running, so this is perfectly fine. This is a review of what it's going to do. It's going to update these different files. And so just hit enter, and it should quickly download everything. It may be a bit slow on your machine, and sometimes it is. That just happens. Unfortunately, with Windows, I'm sure that you may be used to it. So now we're checking that the package is downloaded successfully, which is something that Pac-Man does as part of its operation. I believe we can close this browser now because I don't think we need to download any more packages. So while this Msys is running, I'm also going to open up PowerShell again. And in this PowerShell, what we're going to do is we're going to install the build system. I haven't actually named the build system yet. The build system we're going to use for this tutorial is Mason. Now, if you're familiar with another build system other than Mason, I would recommend you use that because you're used to it and you know how it works. If you've never heard of a build system before, if you don't know what it is, then we're going to use Mason in this tutorial, and Mason makes it very easy to determine like what files you want to compile into what executables. And we'll go over the nitty-gritty of that in a moment. So what we need to type in this console is, remember that we added Python to the path? You actually didn't see it in the system path, it's in the user path. But what we can do is we can type pip just to verify that everything is installed correctly, and you can see that pip is installed because we get a nice output of what different options pip has. But all we need to actually do is type pip install Mason, just like that. That's Mason with an E, by the way. It's referring to some kind of fancy chemistry thing. I don't really know. But now we can type Mason, and it should say error, must specify at least one directory name. And what that means is that Mason is correctly installed. Again, you're going to have to get used to the idea of errors being good in certain cases, because certain errors just mean that the program is installed, but you didn't use it correctly, which is fine when we're just testing it to see if it exists. So you'll notice that a while back, Msys2 reported to us that to complete this update, all Msys2 processes, including this terminal, will be closed. Confirm to proceed. And you can just press enter and that will confirm. And in order to open that back up, what we need to do is press start and type Msys, and you'll see that it pops up right here. And we will get back into this console, and we're going to just type almost the exact same thing, pacman -S, lowercase y, lowercase u, space, and we're also going to type min-gw -w64 -x86_64 -toolchain. That's a bit verbose, but just copy it exactly as I've typed here, and you should be fine. And what this is going to do is it's going to install the compiler for C. And this is a very essential package. So you can see that it's listed a bunch of things that it's going to install here, and just press enter to select all of them because we need all of them. And it's going to download them. This may take a significant amount of time longer than that first download. You can see that it's also performing an update of some system packages, and that's useful for keeping Msys up to date. If you ever feel like your compiler is just being a little too weird, it's probably because it's out of date. So just open up this console and type pacman-syu the same way that we did earlier on in this tutorial, and it should update everything, and then you can see if your compiler is still acting up. So while that's downloading, what we're going to do is see if we cannot open VS Code back up. So just type code in this console and it will bring up Visual Studio Code most likely. And what we're going to do is we're going to write our very first C file. And we'll see if, well, I don't know if I want to do that yet. So let's actually go into the kind of way that Mason works. So in order for Mason to know what files to build and how, what we're going to create is a file called mason.build. Has to be called exactly that. And you can see that it's going to recommend you an extension for build files, but just go ahead and hit don't show again. There are extensions that help you manage Mason a little bit, but we're just going to use the terminal in this tutorial and it's more than effective. So what we need to do is type inside this mason.build project and then an open parenthesis. And then inside here, what we're going to do is we're going to define what our project is. So first you give it a name. So inside single quotes, type, I don't know, C tutorial, if I know how to spell. And you can use spaces, caps, whatever you want in there. If Mason doesn't accept some character that you're trying to type in there, it'll tell you. as much, and so you can just edit that until it looks like something that is valid. And then it wants to know what programming language we're going to be using, and of course that is C. And I added a trailing comma here. You don't have to, but I like to do it, just so that whenever I'm line editing in the future, it's a lot easier to just add a new line without having to go back and add a comma. That's a style thing, it's up to you. And keep in mind that trailing commas are typically not allowed in C. This is a Mason specific thing. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to define our very first executable. So we'll type executable. And in these parentheses, we want to name the executable. So we will call it first, or maybe call it hello. And don't add a .exe at the end. Mason will do that for you. And then it wants to know what the source code of that executable is. And so we're going to type hello.c, which is a file that doesn't exist yet. But don't worry about that. We will create that file very soon once Msys is finished configuring all of our compilers. So that's actually it. That's your entire mason.build file. You can go ahead and close that. And what you may want to do is open up your terminal with the control backtick keybind. The backtick is the key right below escape if you don't know what that is. And it's going to open up PowerShell slowly. And what you can type is Mason and then any folder name that doesn't exist already. So I like to type build dir. But you can type whatever you want, like I said, as long as it doesn't already exist. And it's going to error out most likely. It's actually found GCC because, as you can see in Msys, we actually already installed GCC. It's just installing some extra stuff as well. However, it's going to give us an error because hello.c does not exist. And it's very right about that. We don't have hello.c in this folder. So what we're going to do is, I suppose we play the waiting game. We can actually go inside the build directory and look at the log of what Mason did. And you can see that everything is pretty much configured correctly. It's just that it can't find that file hello.c. And we can close that log. There's also this folder called Mason Private. I would recommend not messing with that folder. It is private after all. And there's Mason Info, which provides a little bit of information about Mason itself. This is not really something that you're going to need to edit or worry about or even look at, but it's interesting to see like what kind of information Mason provides. You can see here, this is the folder that we're in. I've actually never looked at that file before, so that's interesting. It's also got this file called .gitignore. And what this is for something called Git, which we'll get into a later tutorial. That's a tool for managing your source code and for, let me think. It's a tool for ensuring that anything you type is saved forever. And if you delete the file, it's still saved. You can get it back, if that makes sense. It's like a backup system that's very effective. In fact, while this is working, let's go ahead and install Git. It's actually a very easy process. So let's open the browser back up and cringe at the loading time. Man, just feel that processor spin. Okay, what we need to type in here is we need to go to git-scm.org. I believe that's the right website. And I'm kind of doing this off the cuff. I've not rehearsed this tutorial at all. So you can see that's the correct URL because it says Git right here. And you want to download for Windows. And it's telling you a little bit about your download, but don't actually click anything here because it's going to download automatically, as you can see. And interestingly, my downloads have moved up here. That's highly unusual. All right, I believe it is launching even though There's not much indication of that. Yes. So you'll need to give admin permissions for this. If you don't have admin permissions, I believe there's an alternative. I'm not sure what that is. You might need to install the portable version down here. But it should be the same exact process at least. So what it's going to do is it's going to give you information about the license. Just hit next, and it's going to ask you where to install it. It doesn't particularly matter where it's installed, so just leave it there. These things are probably good. You might want to check for updates. And if you have Windows Terminal, this is a great option to check as well. But that's all I need. Just hit next. And here you get to select what you want to use as your editor. And the reason for this is when you're about to commit something, it wants to know it wants you to describe what you commit. And we'll go over that in more detail later. But what you need to know for right now is just that it's wanting an editor. So we're going to select Visual Studio Code and then hit next. And we will say let Git decide or override. I'm going to override this because Git's going to change this in the future. So you can see that here that they intend to change this default. So let's go ahead and just leave it at main. And then, yes, I believe that's fine. And that is also fine. And we will go ahead and do that. And that. And for the most part, you can just skip past all of this. And go on. And we're not going to enable the experimental stuff, and it's going to go ahead and install. Now, Msys is done. So what we can do is we can actually start writing some C code while Git runs. And that file is called hello.c as we defined it to be hello.c. So actually, it's going to recommend you an extension for C. Let's have a look at the recommendations. It wants you to install a whole bunch of extensions. Now, if you want these, cool. I will go ahead and install the UI themes, I suppose, just for extra syntax highlighting and extra colors. Always nice to have. But otherwise, I'm going to leave that alone. So what we need to type in this hello.c file is, this is pretty much going to be an exercise and repeat after me. I'm going to explain this program in more detail in the future, in the next episode actually. But for now, what we need to type is pound include open angle bracket iostream. No, what am I saying? Sorry, that's a C++ tutorial. We need to include stdio.h. Don't do the other include that I typed there because that won't work in C. And then we type int main, open paren, close paren. Inside the parentheses we type a void, and then we type a curly brace. And what we put inside of main is we say puts, and then in double quotes, has to be double quotes, hello world. And this is just a traditional program that every programmer writes whenever they're first learning C. And that's actually all you need to type. So what we can do is we can repeat the previous command by pressing the up arrow. That's a very useful keybind in consoles, by the way. Highly recommend you get used to that. And you can see that it actually configured everything correctly this time, and we didn't get any errors. So what we need to do now is change directories by using the cd command into builder, which is the folder name that you created. And all we need to type in here is ninja. And you can see that it's successfully linked the target hello.exe. And what that means is if you look in here, you will find a file called hello.exe. There it is. And in order to run it, you can type in the console /hello.exe. And you can see that it says hello world, just like we typed here. And so that is actually the end of this tutorial. You have now successfully got a compiler toolchain running. As you can see, we didn't run into any issues with the C++ extension or the C extension, whatever you want to call it. It's the C/C++ extension. This one. So I'm not going to go over how to disable IntelliSense in this particular tutorial. If we run into issues in the future, I will go ahead and go over that. But for now, this is the end of the tutorial. I'm going to go over this again in the next episode and like what all this means. But for now, we have a functioning program called Hello World. So thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope I didn't distract you too much from the language of C, but that's all. So I will see you in the next one.